Hello, and thank you for your interest in our work within the Smart AKIS project. Here we will present some of the key insights and outlooks we identified with our research on smart farming technologies and their innovation and adoption processes. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact us or look at our project website. We will start with some background about our project, and then, since we're social scientists, provide some theoretical concepts with which we work. We'll then follow up with our results presented via 6 key messages, or hypotheses, and end up with some take-home messages. As we've seen in all sectors, digitization also is changing agriculture. The transition to digitization is visible through smart farming, which generally means that machines or sensors collect and use farm data, which in turn change farming processes. These farming processes or tasks rely on data, on location and situation awareness. With the use of data, there's a general expectation that smart farming tools can improve agriculture and respond to the economic, ecological, and societal or social challenges that agriculture faces. However, as with all changes and developments, we expect certain challenges. In this case, those would particularly be information transfer about smart farming tools, availability, how to use or integrate them, how to manage the data, and to ensure that ethical and legal matters are accounted for. Within this context of change in agriculture and digitization, Smart AKIS was developed and funded. It is a thematic network with the aim of becoming self-sustainable, and it hopes to close the gap between research and innovation by fostering exchange between research, industry, extension, and the farming community. It hopes to reach this objective by disseminating applicable research solutions and capture grassroots or farming community needs and ideas regarding smart farming technologies, which I'll refer to from here on as SFTs. The network is a coordination and support action with a budget of about 2 million euros. It lasts or is lasting for about 30 months, which we're almost approaching the end of, and has 13 partners and relies on a multi-actor approach. At ZALF, our team has worked towards several goals and completed several tasks, including exploring user, which by that we mean farmer or advisor, acceptance of SFTs, by identifying farmers' perceptions, ideas, and interests regarding SFTs. We're investigating factors affecting SFT adoption and diffusion processes within farming systems, and we're conducting ex post studies of successful innovations and collecting multimedia material in support of these case studies. With all of this, we're ultimately aiming to enhance the relevance of SFT development and innovation processes by generating interactive and innovation-based collaborations between researchers, advisors, and farmers. That work that we are doing is rooted in the AKIS approach. This means that we consider an agricultural and innovation system as a network of organizations, enterprises, and individuals focused on bringing new products, new processes, and new forms of organization into the economic use, together with the institutions and policies that affect the way different agents interact, share, access, exchange, and use knowledge. By using the AKIS approach, we can respond to our observation that we can't study innovation processes without studying how knowledge is shared between stakeholders. There are several concepts for agricultural knowledge and innovation systems. Those include using an infrastructural view, which addresses organizations and institutions involved as corporate actors in knowledge generation and dissemination. There's the procedural view, which focuses on knowledge flows, learning processes, and collaboration for innovation. And there's also a functional understanding that we can rely on, which highlights functions and objectives of the AKIS system within a normative frame. More specifically, here you see an example of the infrastructural view on the left. This highlights the Dutch AKIS. And so you see the public actors in blue, mostly educational and training bodies in the Wageningen University. The private actors, such as upstream and downstream industries and firms, those are all in red, and farmers and their organizations are in green. You see that this infrastructural view gives you a static picture of a certain constellation of actors and their linkages. Here, for example, there are little direct linkages between research and farmers, but a mediated connection via brokers. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, we use the AKIS concept to highlight the learning and collaboration processes that take place in an agricultural innovation system and to make the synergies and the mutual support apparent that leads to successful innovation processes. So on the one hand, we're working with an understanding of the social systems and interactions in a knowledge and innovation system, and on the other hand, we're working with certain understandings and approaches toward understanding innovations. Innovations, as we consider them, are not steady states, but rather processes. Innovations can be considered a new good, a new production method or market, but can also be considered a new form of organization and lifestyle that ultimately trigger long-lasting changes. One common way of addressing innovations and whether they are adopted or not is by considering their characteristics. There are 5 characteristics of innovations as perceived by individuals that may explain the rate of their adoption. Relative advantages is how much better an innovation is perceived to be compared to the preceding idea, technology, or method. Compatibility describes how much an innovation is perceived as being consistent with existing values, past experiences, and needs of potential adopters. If an idea is incompatible, it won't be adopted as quickly. Complexity reflects how difficult to understand and use an innovation is. The more complicated an innovation is, the more slowly it is to be adopted. Trialability is the degree to which an innovation may be experimented with and then adopted on an incremental basis rather than all at once. This serves as a sort of insurance. Observability is the degree to which the outcome of an innovation is visible to others. If the results are easily visible, then the innovation is more likely to be adopted. So within our project, we want to link farmers, innovations, and the AKIS context by first zooming in and looking at farmers' characteristics, attitudes, perspectives, and their material and structural context. We also want to then zoom out a bit by considering farmers as a part of social systems such as family, peer groups, professional associations, and rural communities, etc. Lastly, we want to zoom even further out and understand SFT diffusion in the agricultural sector as a result of a performative, active AKIS. To link these different components and come to certain results, we draw on a European-wide survey with 287 farmers from 7 different countries, 22 expert interviews with experts from all different sectors, including research, practice, advisory, policy, and industry from throughout all of Europe. And then we also use results from regional innovation workshops in each of the 7 regional hubs, and including different actors. And we'll focus here on the German workshops. The first result is that contrary to many existing studies, we conclude that cropping system and farm size matter for SFT adoption and that age and education are contested and more complex. We came to that result by taking a closer look at the farmers that we surveyed. Our sampling was purposeful rather than representative because each of our project partners aimed to interview equal numbers of adopters and non-adopters in the cropping systems that were economically most important in each participating region. So there were variations between the numbers of farmers surveyed, ranging from 28 in Germany and Spain to 49 in France and 68 in Greece. In Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK, most of the farmers surveyed were adopters, whereas in Greece and Serbia, the large majority of farmers were non-adopters. Similarly, most arable farmers were adopters, and tree crop farmers were mostly non-adopters. Our findings confirm the hypothesis that the larger the farm, the more likely the rate of SFT adoption, or rather, technology adoption and farm size are positively correlated. Experts emphasize this as a central deciding factor as well, but address that age and education were interrelated with experience and that economic size was a deciding factor which combines the physical farm size with the cropping system. But there are also experts who negated the importance of age as well as farm properties, like size and structure, and rather discussed knowledge and experience as important factors. At the regional innovation workshops, education on its own was discussed as complex, and that education is not only the official level completed alone, but should also include continuing education and experience-based knowledge as key to adoption of SFT or information about SFT. Farm size was also discussed at the regional innovation workshops in terms of adoption, and the relevance of SFT for small farms was discussed. In particular, the type of SFTs that would be relevant to smaller farm sizes that would be appropriate and affordable for those kinds of contexts. Next, to better understand the context in which SFT could be used for farms across Europe, we focused on the agricultural challenges and suggest that farmers' perceptions of these challenges reflect their farm and site-specific context, and that can tell us where SFT could be most relevant. If we just look at general results across all of Europe, perceptions of farmers are rather homogeneous, telling us that challenges are largely equally relevant in all regions where we conducted the survey. However, at the country level, we saw differences between perceived challenges. For example, about 90% of the farmers from the UK agreed that regulation compliance was important, whereas only about 20% of Greek farmers agreed. And here, only about 45 or 50% really agreed, if we look at the general trend across Europe. So this really tells us that we need to look at region-specific perceptions and experience to understand the context in which SFTs could be relevant. Experts had mixed views, but also emphasized the reduction of herbicides, fungicides, and crop diseases, etc., as major challenges that would make SFTs relevant for farmers, and also to help use SFTs to increase productivity. At the regional innovation workshops, regulation compliance and transparency for consumers were named as challenges for farmers that could make SFT relevant for farmers. So based on the challenges that farmers perceive as important, we hypothesize that farmers have high expectations of SFT but are not convinced that they can improve individual farm situation. To talk to farmers about SFT potential to overcome challenges with, we asked them about 4 different types of SFT during the course of the survey. We addressed mapping, recording SFTs, which included everything from aerial images to soil moisture and weather data with automatic upload. Also tractor, GPS, and connected tools, including variable rate technology and controlled traffic farming. Then we also addressed farm management information systems and apps, and we asked them about autonomous machines or robots. The SFT type that would be the most useful to farms depends a lot, of course, on the cropping system. Here, it's apparent that in orchards or in tree crops, mapping and recording is the most relevant type, and in arable systems, tractors with connected GPS are the most important type of SFT. If we take a closer look at how the usefulness of SFT can be distinguished, we see that these preferences reflect the relationship between farm size and adoption and the type of SFT. Generally, non-adopters saw autonomous machines as most useful across all farm size classes. If we look at tractor GPS and connected tools, we see that their relevance grows with the size of the farm area, regardless of adoption or non-adoption. FMIS, or Farm Management Information Systems and Apps, were more important mostly for the smaller farm sizes and decreased in their relevance as the farm size increased. We saw a similar trend with the recording and mapping types of SFTs, so those were more important in the smaller sizes and became less important mostly as farm size increased. But this is a little bit less homogeneous or less clear, and if we don't take into account these single observations here where you see the solid yellow bar. We asked farmers to then agree with statements we made about SFT potential, 4 being that they agree the most strongly and 1 that they disagree the most strongly. We see that the highest agreement is with the most general statements that SFT are useful and better than previous tools. But when we asked more specific questions, it's clear that there's more uncertainty, which is visible here with the standard deviation. Those are that SFT improve farm impact on nature, that they improve farm income, and that SFT can provide better information for decision making. So then we looked at these three statements more in detail to see where that variation comes from. So when we asked if SFT provide better information for decision making, we see that first of all, farmers understood our question just based on their answer regarding autonomous machines and robots at the bottom of this figure here, since these SFT provide the least information and they only act on information on their own. The strongest agreement here was only for apps and recording or mapping, which are almost solidly green. The 30% disagreement for GPS and VRT associated with tractors highlights that these SFT may not be used to their greatest potential. There was a country effect regarding farmers' perceptions of SFT to improve both farm income and their impact on nature. Countries like Serbia and Greece with least adoption agreed most strongly with these statements, and the Netherlands, a country with higher adoption, disagreed the most. So this really suggests that perceptions of SFT to improve farming depend on farmers' experience, and that higher expectations of SFT come from farmers with less experience with SFT. The experts made clear that the potential of SFT is widely discussed amongst the farming community, but that the expectation of SFT is clearly related to lowering the cost of production and increasing farm income by making work more efficient and reducing costs associated with labor. At the Regional Innovation Workshop in Germany, the different stakeholders expressed that there could be a high ecological added value of using SFT, but farmers also expressed that this should potentially first be visible on other farms so that the observability is visible, but not on their own farms. Despite high expectations for SFT on farms, farmers do not widely adopt SFT due to risks and numerous. There are several similarities and some differences between the barriers identified by both adopters and non-adopters. Non-adopters say that the investment costs are too high, that SFT are too complex to use, that the available technology is not appropriate for farm context and size, that the added value of SFT is unclear, and that there is a lack of access to live demonstrations of SFT with a neutral contact. Adopters also say that investment costs are too high and that the data as presented is too difficult to interpret. They also say that devices are not interoperable or precise enough, and also that the added value is unclear, and that there is a lack of neutral advice. Experts mirror the farmers' opinions by reiterating that the funds for investments are not available, but that neither are the appropriate technologies. The cost, benefit, and added value is still not clear, complexity is an issue, and neutral advice that is not brand-specific really is missing. Although farmers see the potential that lies in SFT, they really fear major problems and yield losses that are associated with inadequate setup and application of SFT. At one regional innovation workshop, a German service provider for geomapping and sensor technology said that farmers may even be convinced that the SFT has a high potential of saving time and inputs and generating higher yields, but that the initial investment of time to get used to the machine or the technology, it's too high, and it's too risky to install SFT when the staff is maybe not ready to operate it. And so essentially the SFT is not worth the 10 minutes time that you would need to use it because there's just so much risk associated with so much going wrong in those 10 minutes. Despite these barriers to SFT adoption, we found that farmers are experimenters, curious, and seek information and solutions to overcome challenges, including SFT. In seeking solutions to deal with challenges, farmers seek out information from a number of sources. Regarding information on SFT, the most important sources for farmers were other farmers, agri-tech providers, and private advice. As a Dutch farmer stated, when information on SFT comes from within the farmer community, the amount of trust will be higher because it is not attached to big commercial enterprises that are after your money. When we asked about whether or not they experimented on their farms, and if so, with whom, we found out that a third of those farmers that we interviewed experiment alone, and almost a third experiment together with advisors or researchers. So this really underlines the importance of these actors for farmers, both as information sources and for collaboratively seeking and working on solutions on the farm. Some of the reasons for the high priority farmers give other farmers as sources of information seem to be explained by trust issues and innovation characteristics like trialability and observability. So in this way, experts really confirm the statement that farmer-to-farmer networks are crucial as sources of information on innovations and SFT development. Farmers want to see the SFT in action and evaluate its potential themselves. Discussions at the regional innovation workshops confirm that demonstrations and real demo farms were crucial for information regarding new SFT and developments. So real exposure lets farmers assess the situation themselves the best. So finally, we found that farmers and experts have suggestions on how to improve the applicability of SFT. We asked farmers in a short open answer question which improvements they had for SFT. We then grouped their answers into 4 categories, each addressing different scales. The largest scale was access. Here, improving access to information, reducing costs, and providing infrastructure were noted as crucial to gaining access to SFTs. At the technological system level, consolidation through simplification and compatibility were mentioned as crucial. At the data level, the efficiency, simplification were the most important, and at the data level, data transfer and mobility, and data as information were mentioned as the most important steps to improving SFTs for experts. Really also agreed and said that training was also deemed as crucial, which is related to access. Simplifying the use and interoperability and clarifying data ownership were also mentioned as essential improvements to SFTs, or SFT adoption. One of the regional innovation workshops in Germany focused explicitly on small farms and small farm structures. Here, some basic problems specific to small farms were mentioned as access to SFT, communicating the added value of existing SFTs, improving the know-how of how to use SFT, especially for smaller farmers which don't have the capacity for training. Furthermore, SFT need to be optimized to the smaller storage capacity on these types of farms. Section control for smaller fields and complicated boundaries needed to be developed, and due to the high variety of farm businesses associated with smaller farms and farm structures, modular programs would be needed to be adapted to the individual farm situation. So in conclusion, with that, we have some final summarizing points. So we really found that farmers observe and are curious about new technologies, but they're cautious when it comes to the adoption of innovations. Farmers are experimenters, both alone and especially together with researchers and advisors. Farmers look widely for information, and particularly for information from private advice contacts or other farmers. They desire really live demonstrations to observe SFTs. And although almost all experts from science, industry, and innovation incubators perceive digitization as a strong and irreversible trend of which farmers should take advantage, so far there really are only a few examples that clearly prove such strengths. An AKIS approach to SFT innovation, or studying the innovation processes related to SFT development, really seems like a promising approach to use regarding how farmers look for information and the networks between the different actors in the agricultural sector. The actors associated with the corresponding AKIS are really not equally ready or informed for implementing SFTs, and these different levels of readiness at the actor level can strongly influence the dissemination processes of the SFTs. So we recommend that socio-technical change requires a very interactive, or more interactive, and targeted approach to farmers' needs and interests, and requires also a socially sensitive dialogic accompaniment to the technical development processes. That these are really necessary necessary accompaniments to the technological development. Here are the references that we use in our presentation or referred to here. And with that, we'd like to say thank you for your interest and your attention. And for more information, you can go to our website or you can send us or me an email. Thanks again.